Hello everyone, this is Impish. As you can tell by the title, this video is about drawing legs. Quickly before we get into things, if you do like this video, then please remember to like and subscribe. So personally, I've always struggled with drawing legs and anatomy in general, and that was always the case until I decided to do things a bit differently. The first thing I need to tell you is that I cannot teach you how to draw legs exactly. The reason why this is the case is because all legs vary in shape, size and angle. So you don't want to be drawing the same kind of leg all the time. I can only tell you how to draw a 3D shape. Most teachers, when they're teaching you anatomy, they're going to tell you how a certain thing looks. But in my opinion, you should instead look at legs for yourself and note down what you notice about the shape, about the angle, about the gesture. This is because people have all kinds of legs, skinny legs, muscular legs, curvy legs, and the importance is being able to observe those changes in form. And this will prevent you from drawing the same kind of leg over and over and over. Now, linking to this point, there's a key thing you need to remember, and that's never to draw from imagination, especially when you're learning something for the first time. You need to take advantage of references and closely observe the images in the references. All of this is important so that you prevent yourself from making things up. And that's the key problem behind not being able to draw certain things, is that the mind loves symbols as opposed to reality, and so it will try to make things up. You'll start drawing legs in a very wonky, weird way because in your imagination that's how you see things, but in reality it's very, very different. And so you have to very closely observe what it is you're drawing, and the only way to really do that is through reference. Now, in the video footage that I'm showing, I'm breaking things down by elements. So I write down skeleton, muscle, silhouette, then flow. These are basically guidelines to help the process of breaking down the image. When you're looking at something for the first time, it's just a jumble of shapes and shadows and form. And so having these guidelines are helpful in understanding what it is that you're looking at. But the massive mistake that many beginners make is heavily relying on the skeleton structure. And this is kind of the mistake that I made that made drawing anatomy and anything extremely painful, because I would draw out the skeleton structure and then my anatomy would look extremely rigid. And this is because the human body doesn't move like a robot, it moves like a creature. And creatures have muscles, not just skeletons, and muscles tend to compress and stretch and move in lots of different ways, unpredictable ways, which just the knowledge of a skeleton isn't going to really help with. Two things to really look out for when drawing 3D shapes is this. The first thing is that 3D shapes always have planes. They have surfaces facing different angles. So remember that whatever you're drawing is going to have those different planes. So legs, for example, tend to be curved, tend to be cylindrical, sort of. It's not exactly cylindrical. You have to look at the shadows of legs. The shadows can appear anywhere and everywhere on the leg, but you'll notice the shadows usually along the side, along the calf, along the thigh. Use these as a reference point, not just the outside of the legs. The shadows are just as viable as the actual form, even if you're drawing a more cartoonish style. The other thing is to observe perspective and foreshortening. If a leg is moving towards the camera or away from the camera, then that's going to affect its size. The other point is to observe flow and curves in what you're drawing. Animals and people do not have straight edges. There's always some kind of curve. If it's a big curve or a small curve, it's always going to be in that kind of shape. One example is from a side-on view of the legs. The front of the thigh appears more curved, whereas the back appears straighter, and the back of the calf appears curved and the front of the calf appears straighter. And a similar pattern is seen when you're looking head on at the legs. But again, using this as a rule is a big mistake. The next 2 points are something maybe a bit more advanced if you want to take your drawing to the next level. The first is seen by many professional artists, and that's the decision to make either simplifications or exaggerations in the shape. This is really about understanding reality and then taking it to the next level, to exaggerate certain things, to simplify certain things, to emphasize a certain form, and that can appear more pleasant. However, many artists try to start off with this simplification or exaggeration, and it becomes a problem because they don't actually understand what a leg is looking like in reality in a 3D space. For example, if you're trying to draw more of an anime or cartoonish style, then obviously in those styles the legs are always simplified. First understanding what it is that is being simplified and then you yourself making the conscious decision to make those simplifications, that is really the better process to take. This allows you to make your own decisions and takes you closer to your own style, because you're understanding reality and then you're choosing to change it in whatever way you feel is best, not just in the way that other people are changing it. And of course, it's not always essential to make these simplifications and exaggerations. You could just enjoy drawing things very realistically, and that's perfectly fine as well. The other point is to try experimenting with different angles and poses. Usually we're looking at the legs straight on or side on, but of course there are many different other angles that you can look at legs. For example, from a very steep perspective, looking top down, or looking bottom up. Also any strange poses, something more dynamic, something even slightly contorted, something a bit more interesting. If you can find a reference image for that kind of pose that you want to create, study that. This will keep any drawings more interesting for you. One side note when drawing not just legs but the rest of the body is to remember to zoom out. Always look at the entire image during the process of whatever drawing you're making. And this links to being light and loose, but when you're drawing something, there's always tempting to get too stuck in the detail, and that can obviously make things way out of proportion, versus if you're looking at the larger shapes more regularly, making sure the proportions are correct. The final thing is really about confidence. You have to be confident in your line work, and of course this is again related to being light and loose, creating those larger sweeping lines, and a lot of this has to do about being mentally loose, not being so serious, not being so rushed. Always approach your drawings in a very patient way. There's nothing to beat or win, so don't treat your drawings like a race, treat it more like a dance, and be very deliberate and very conscious with each stroke. Many artists are very deeply sensitive and attached to their art, so don't give up or compare your work to others, because you should only be in competition with yourself when it comes to your art. And if you do find an artist who you admire, then look closer at what they're doing. What are they doing differently? Observe their line work and be curious. And don't think that being better or worse at art makes you a more or less worthy person. Get better at art because you love good art, and separate the perceived quality of your art from your own sense of self-worth. So that's my take on how to draw legs, and if you like this kind of video, then remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.